Welcome back, everyone, to Ed Up Edge, where we discuss all things career education, leadership, and life hacks. Hear from some of the most amazing and insightful guests in higher education. Let's go. All right, everyone, welcome back to Ed Up Edge, where we discuss all things career education, leadership, and life hacks. Today, we're diving into a skill that does not get a lot of credit, especially when it comes to admissions and leadership, and it is emotional intelligence. Okay, first, we have to understand that emotional intelligence is not about being calm and nice. Okay, it's about really understanding who you are, reading the room, and then leading with intention. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is break down the 5 components of emotional intelligence, and then we're going to get into why this is critical in admissions, in leadership, and then how we can strengthen our emotional intelligence. Okay, so let's dive in. So, first off, when it comes to the 5 components, the first thing is self awareness. This is so critical. Recognizing your emotions, your triggers, and how your mood actually affects others. I know a lot of you guys hear people say, be careful of the energy that you're bringing into my space. That's actually a real thing. But also in admissions, you have to be able to understand when you're feeling frustrated and when you're getting to the point of burnout. I always tell people, if you're not prepared to get on the phone, do not pick up the phone. All right. Sometimes you have to walk away, relax, digest, okay, and then come back and return to your calls because you only get one shot. And a lot of times your students are depending on you. So if you're not in the right mind frame, you should not be talking to students. Okay, my leaders, you have to understand when your tone or presence sets the vibe in meetings. Sometimes, as soon as you guys walk into the room, your team can tell what kind of meeting it's going to be. Some of you show up and it's like, oh gosh, here we go. What did we do today? What happened now? All right. You have to be aware of your energy when you're communicating with your team members too. All right. Number 2, self regulation. Managing your emotions, especially in stressful and emotional charged moments. Okay, admissions, you have to stay calm when a student actually cancels. Okay, when they ghost you, when they're pushing back. So many times I hear calls when a student is like, you know what, I'm not really sure if this is what I want to do. I think I'm going to take a step back and start later. You guys automatically jump into, okay, so how is your life going to change if you don't move forward? What are you going to do now? You still going to remain a bum? I have heard an advisor say that to a student, talk about compliance infractions times 10. But if you're able to take a step back and understand why a student is giving you pushback, understand what their circumstances are and why they feel the way they do, you're going to be able to handle the situation so much better. Okay. My leaders, responding with patience when an advisor underperforms. Okay. Stop putting people on pips when they've been in the job for 2 weeks, especially if you didn't even train them on how to actually do the job properly. All right. I talk to a lot of advisors on TikTok and I feel so bad for them because you have some people who just started and they're given these outlandish goals without even understanding the admissions culture and gross versus net and conversions and how to even talk to a student, how to conduct a conversation. And they're like, Kat, oh my gosh, my goal is 15. And I'm like, how many do you have? They're like, 1. I'm like, how much time do you have? A week. And it's like, huh? How does that even make sense? It has to make sense. Okay, leaders. So be patient. Stop giving goals, but then not given a way to actually reach them. This is why so many people start the dream job of admissions, and before their 90 day, they're already gone. And it has nothing to do with what you told them to do. It has to do more with they thought that this was something and it's not. So now they're out. Okay. Number 3, motivation. Being driven by internal goals and not pressure. Okay. Story of admissions lives, right? When people are driven by pressure, they start to make really silly mistakes. And then they start to say stuff like, oh, you can enroll today. You could always cancel later. I've heard this in my entire career. And that's not how you get a student to stick. Okay. If you're saying stuff like this to your students, you need to stop immediately because it's going to take a huge hit on retention. And it doesn't say to your potential students that this is something that I am actually committed to. You're giving them a way out before they even start class. And then you're wondering why you're at the front desk and you're looking at the checklist and nobody has signed in next to your name. Just saying. Okay, with my leaders, make sure that you're keeping your teams focused and inspired and connected to their why. I always tell advisors, make sure that when you get to those times where you're feeling burnt out, go back to your why. Why did you want to do this in the first place? But for leaders, it's very important for you to help your team members remember their why also. Okay. Why was this role so important to you? What did you want to accomplish? Why was changing lives a goal of yours? Sometimes when you're having those one-on-ones with your advisors, you have to be able to remind them of their why too. Okay, empathy. Oh, this is one of my favorite topics. Okay, because in a lot of cases it doesn't exist. But, anyways, understanding and feeling what others are actually experiencing emotionally. Okay, admissions. Listen to the real reason behind a student's hesitation. Sometimes you guys have a tendency to put everybody in a box, right? So, someone would say, how much is the tuition? You automatically jump into financial aid. They didn't ask you about financial aid. This person may be paying the tuition in full and they want to know what their payments may look like. Or there may be something else going on. They might have attended a few schools and they were burned, right? Or they're overly passionate about starting, but they know that their support system is not going to be on board. The more information that you know about the student, you place yourself in a better position to help them. Because if it does have to do with a support system not being on board, now you have the opportunity to say, you know what, let's set up a call. Okay, because who can explain the program better than you? You send a student home to explain what you just told them, and it is an absolute disaster. And then when their parent or their spouse starts asking them questions about the program, they're stuck and they have no idea how to actually address those situations. In leadership, recognizing when a team member is burnt out and offering support. Listen, I was guilty of this too. As a leader, right? Sometimes we're in this mind frame that we have to keep going. We have starts that are coming up every 5, 6, 7 weeks. And I don't have time to deal with this. We just need to perform. But what happens is if your team members continue to keep going and going and going, and they're drowning in certain areas that are not addressed, guess what? Their activity is actually going to get worse. It's not going to get better. When you're having those one-on-ones, there's so many teams who do not have one-on-ones, and this is so important. If you're not having one-on-ones, you need to start. But during that one-on-one session between you and your advisor, that's your opportunity to sometimes put work aside and say, you know, what are your personal goals? What do you want to achieve? How am I as a leader? Okay, I know some of you guys don't want to ask those questions, but you have to. Okay. Number 5, social skills, building relationships, communicating clearly, and influencing with emotional awareness. Okay. Admissions, you have to be able to build rapport. If your students do not trust you, they're not going to make the investment. You have to understand that education is one of the biggest investments apart from buying a car and property. All right. You have to be able to ask them, okay, is this worth it to you? All of your students have different personalities. And I know sometimes you fall into that trap of judging people. You see an area code, you start treating everyone the same way. You see a single mom, you see someone that's working in a certain field for a certain amount of years, you start asking them the same type of questions. Every single person's situation and circumstance is different. So when you pick up the phone and someone answers, it is showtime. You are on lockdown and you're only listening to what that person on the other line or the person in front of you is telling you about their situation, and then you're responding and advising appropriately. That is so important. When you're asking open-ended questions and then you're actively listening, it says to that person, wow, they're actually invested and they're interested in what's going on with me. When someone trusts you, it makes them want to elaborate more. All right, keep that in mind. For leaders, okay, let's talk about facilitating productive team conversations. okay, resolving conflicts and creating a positive culture. Now, we hear this all the time. People do not leave companies, they leave bad management. And I'm telling you, it's a true fact. It happened to one of my closest family members just recently. When you have someone who is one of your top performers, and this person actually thought that they were going to retire at this company until the boss had a meeting and just reamed into everyone, even the high performers. And he's like, you know what? I can retire any day. You guys can walk out. You can leave. You can put in your 2 weeks notices now. It doesn't matter to me. What message are you sending to your employees who are committed and loyal to your company? Okay, stop acting out of emotions. All right. You want to make sure that you're able to encourage productivity. And a lot of times, the way that you do that is by understanding where your employees actually need help. Okay, and where they're falling behind. Quick note, as leaders, sometimes we continue to train on things that we think that our advisors need without asking them, what do you actually want to be trained on this week? You know, where are you actually falling short? You'd be surprised what they have to say. Okay. All right. So now we're going to get into why this matters with leadership. Why is emotional intelligence important in leadership? So you might want to get your notebooks out. Okay. Because you guys are leading from the front. So, number one, we're actually in admissions. Let's start with admissions first. Okay. Handling objections without defensiveness. All right. Stay calm, listen fully, and respond with curiosity. Stop telling your students, well, this is what's going to happen if you don't move forward. How about what would your life look like if you don't take this opportunity? Right. Or can you tell me more about what's holding you back? You're answering the questions and you don't even know what the concern is. Okay. Number two, reading tone and body language on Zoom calls or regular phone calls. Okay. Emotional intelligence, it actually helps you pick up on hesitation, on sarcasm. If you're reading their body language, we all know that the folded arms means that they're closed off, right? But if someone has a confused look on their face, or if they start to sit back, or their eyes start to wander, you can easily tell, okay, something is going on in here. Do not just keep going. Stop the conversation and ask them, okay, what's going on? I see the confused look on your face. Talk to me. I know that I've been giving you so much information today. Let's walk through this together. Okay, pause. Okay, do not take objections personally. I know a lot of our advisors, every single time a student says that they don't want to move forward or they have to think about it, you automatically think is because you said something wrong, right? That's not always the case. In any business, when you're dealing with people, this is something that you have to go through because a lot of people are indecisive, okay? Just like a lot of you, right? So you have to be able to say, okay, something is off here. You were overly excited. What happened? Let's talk about this, okay? So that's reading tone and body language. Number three, knowing when to push and when to pause. Okay, when it comes to emotional intelligence, um, it's the skill of you being allowed to read the emotional temperature of a moment, right? So it's kind of like those situations when you're with your partner and you're in an argument. Like my husband knows when it's time for him to back away. When I get real quiet, he needs to disappear for a couple hours, right? But you're reading the room and you understand, you know, who you're actually dealing with. So you have a student who is overwhelmed. Sometimes you have to pause and give them the room to just breathe or speak because now it's building trust. A lot of your students expect you to keep selling, 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 despite how they feel or the cues that you're actually picking up on. But if you're able to ask a question and just stop and say absolutely nothing, that says a lot to your students because they may not get that same experience from all the other schools that they've actually spoken to. So you want to make sure that you're matching their energy. Okay. Number four, building trust with skeptical students or parents. Okay, so in my admissions community, I get a lot of questions that's asking about parents, the parents who want to take over the interviews. So you have the student, you have the parent, and every time you ask the student something, the parent is like, yeah, so This is what I think is happening. And I know how frustrating that could be, because I know a lot of you want to just say, ma'am, can you please excuse yourself? But that's never going to work. Okay. You have to make sure that you are including the parent in the equation. A lot of times parents are overbearing because they feel excluded. I never really understood this until I became a parent myself. My son is 5, and I'm all over his teachers and all of his therapists, because the bottom line is my son cannot speak for himself. So you need to be speaking to me. Okay. And I feel sorry for myself when my son gets to that point of college, because working in the industry and then being a parent on top of that, it's going to be a wrap. So give these parents some grace, right? But include them in the situation. Commonality is definitely going to help a lot. I know when I was in your seat, how I felt as a parent. Okay. Or I know the fact that even though my kid is not as old as yours, I know how it feels to be a part of the process. Okay. We're going to walk through this together. Or ask the parent, what do they think about the industry? Why are they so passionate about said industry that the student is not interested in? Be realistic with the parents, but you want to include both people in the equation. That's how you get the buy-in from the parents. Okay. You do not want to ignore them the entire interview. I have seen this happen in real time, and it never turns out good. Okay. Lastly, balancing emotional boundaries with compassion. Now, you can care deeply about something without carrying someone else's burden. So, this is a very touchy topic, because we have a lot of empaths who are advisors, and some of them take these situations home with them. They take everything personally. And because a student feels a certain way, they also feel like it's the end of the world for them, right? This is an opportunity for you to step away, right? Because it kind of goes back to filling your cup. You're not going to be able to help your students if you have nothing else to give yourself, right? And when it comes to admissions, it takes a lot of emotional and mental stamina, because your students come to you with some really heavy situations. And I know that if you really care, it's going to be on your mind, but you have to be able to balance that. You have to know when your emotions are getting to a certain point where you have to say, all right, I need to step away from this situation. I need to refill, do whatever you need to do to fill your cup, listen to music, call someone else who is going to give you support, and then you revisit the situation again. But if you continue to ignore how you feel, it is going to lead to burnout. Okay. So burnout also blocks empathy. When you have nothing to give, you're not really concerned about someone else's situation, because you're trying to survive yourself. All right. So that's very important. Now, emotional intelligence. Why is this important in leadership? Okay, this is critical because you're leading from the front, right? And your team members, they are depending on you to help them succeed. All right. So, number one, coaching without micromanaging. All right, you have to give your team members space. If you are constantly hovering over them, right, it sends a message that you do not trust them. It sends a message that you have no confidence in them and their ability to succeed and complete tasks. And what's going to happen is your team members, they're also going to feel that, and it's going to hurt their confidence as well. All right. Another thing with micromanaging, we have to understand that sometimes it's needed, but I'm going to get to that in a second. The second thing is navigating team stress without burnout. Okay, as we can see and hear, burnout is a theme because it's a real thing. Okay, a lot of your people burn out, and sometimes it's because they don't get the support that's needed. Okay. Emotional intelligence, it actually helps you notice the signs before performance drops. If you have that person on your team who's the most excited and now they've gone silent, they're not giving any feedback during meetings. You have a top performer who's now at the bottom, right? And the thing is, they don't even seem bothered. That's a problem. You have to be able to pick up on this. You have to know your team members. When I was working out of a school as an enrollment leader, always knew my team inside out, to the point where, based on how someone said good morning to me, I give them a couple minutes and then I call them and I'm like, come see me. And they're like, and I'm like, yep, get over here. And they're always like, how do you always know? And it's because I pay attention. You have to pay attention to your team members. You should be able to pick up on if someone says, hey, good morning, something is off. Come on, sit down, let's talk. I understand what you're going through. I've heard leaders say, leave your drama at the door. Come on, we got to get rid of that because your team members are people who go through real circumstances, who have real emotions. So if someone just went through something crazy at home or even on their way to work, that is an opportunity for you to connect with that team member. Come sit, have a chat. Do you need to talk about what just happened? Do you need to take a walk? That's how you show up as a leader, and that's how you show up to support your team members. Okay, that is so important. When your team starts to feel like they're just another number, who's performing for you, it ruins the morale of your team. Okay. Understanding different personalities. Stop managing everyone the same way. Okay, that is a recipe for disaster. All of your team members have different personalities. Okay, everyone is not weirdos like us, right? So you may have some team members who need structure. Some team members may need freedom to do what they need to do, right? And now we come back to the micromanaging because there are some team members who need to be micromanaged. And one of my besties, I love what she says. She doesn't call it micromanaging. She calls it close accountability because that's what some of them actually need. All right, to get back on point. So you want to make sure that you're adapting your leadership style to the personality of the people that you're actually serving. Okay, it's going to do you a lot of justice too. And as leaders, it's going to take a lot of stress off of your plate. All right, number 4, keeping your own emotions in check under pressure. Okay, sometimes you may have to vent privately. Okay. You may come out of a meeting where you just got reamed into because of your team's performance or lack thereof, right? You don't want to come out of the meeting and then take that out on your team members because it's going to rub them the wrong way. You're leading the pack, right? So really and truly, you have to take accountability too. All right. So make sure that your reaction sets the tone in a good way because they feed off of your energy. If you're panicking, they're panicking. Imagine a team who's like, okay, we have no idea which way this company is going. And then you see the leader walking back and forth and they're like fidgeting. Your team members are going to be like, we're screwed. I might as well start looking for something else, right? So you have to make sure that you're managing and showing up emotionally appropriately. All right, leading with empathy during change or low morale. This kind of ties into what we were talking about just now. But here's the thing. If in fact there's some changes that's coming down the road that are not exactly positive, or you're in a position where you're like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Okay. You don't want that to show on your face. Instead, include your team. There were times where I was so behind on the start. And it was like almost embarrassing. However, I was able to exceed the start. And this is how I did it. I brought my team into the equation, so I called everybody in the office and I let them know exactly what's going on. First of all, I used to have a board in my office, so everything was transparent. They knew where we were and they knew how far behind we were. But everyone is expecting me to drop the number. And I'm like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to challenge you guys. Okay. We're behind by X amount, but this is what we're going to do. We're doubling. We are going to double the goal. In the beginning, they looked at me like I was nuts, like I had like a couple heads spinning around. But it was a challenge and I made it a team effort. So now everyone got excited because they understood that each of you play a role in the success of our team, our department, and our school. We exceeded the expectation because when you double the goal, now they're shooting for something higher. Right? So you may not meet the goal that you doubled, but you're going to meet and exceed your original goal that you were behind on because it's all about a mindset. So it's like being transparent with your team and you're letting them know, look, this is exactly what's going on. I know it's not the greatest position to be in. However, each of you were hired because I believe in you. Okay. And I know that we all have the potential to make this happen. Is everyone on board? Now you're getting everyone pumped and they're like, yep, this is exactly what we're going to do. Right. So you have to be careful with that. If you have to vent in private. Okay. Do not vent to your team members. Okay. Vent in private. Call up a friend. Ask for support. All right. I have leaders that call me all the time because they just want to vent. And you know what is some of the best conversations because I've been there before. Okay. I've been a leader. I understand this game and I understand how it feels when you want your team members to win so bad and there's so much pressure on you that you feel like you just want to pick your computer up and throw it out the window, along with a few team members. Okay. So keep that in mind. Be very, very aware. All right. So lastly, we're going to get to how to strengthen your emotional intelligence because this is actually critical. All right. The first thing, daily habits. I don't know how many of you actually journal. It's something that I do here and there, but I need to be more consistent with it. But the days that I do journal, it is life changing because it's like such a release. You're writing everything down. You know that you're not being judged. You know you're not talking to anyone in particular whose feelings are going to get hurt, and you're just releasing. Okay, journal. Do emotional check-ins with yourself. What's so important is for you to understand why do you feel a certain way. Ask yourself that question. Why do I feel this way? Why is this affecting me in this way? Why is it every single time I see that person, my entire day is ruined? Sometimes you have to go back and ask yourself, why are things the way they are? Why do you feel this way? And then be able to pinpoint that. You may find that it's something that's not even that serious. Okay. Ask for feedback. Now, I know this is something that a lot of leaders don't like to do, but you're going to have to start doing it. Ask your team members for feedback. What can you do better? You know, how can you actually support them? Admissions, ask your students for feedback. You can easily say, okay, is there anything that you needed me to explain better? You know, that's how you grow. Okay. It can't be great, great, great all the time. Sometimes it takes some, you know, it takes some feedback that you may not like, you know, constructive feedback to actually promote that change. All right. Practice active listening and empathy. Listen to understand, not to reply. All right. So basically, you're reflecting back on what you heard. And this is for leaders in admissions. It seems as if you're unsure about, okay, so what I heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, but dot, 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 right? It shows the person that you are actually interested in what they have to say, how they feel, and that you're listening. Okay. And you want to know more. So remember that. Empathy builds connection faster than persuasion. Okay. Number 3, role playing tough conversations. Okay. This is very funny when it comes to leadership because I know every single one of you, and you can't lie, every single one of you have, or at some point had that one person on your team where you're like, Lord Jesus, if I wasn't saved. Right. And it's that one person, if you have to have that challenging conversation with, it's like, okay, I know I'm a flip the minute this person opens their mouth. You have to role play that situation. It may seem odd, but it works. Okay. The reason why it's so important is because when you are by yourself, you're going to automatically come up with questions that you know that person is going to say because you understand their personality, which is what it makes you tick. It's one of your triggers, right? When you're by yourself and you're role playing your responses, you get the opportunity to get those emotions out the door, right? So now you start to get to the point where you're like, ooh, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to say that. Get that out the way, because when you do have the conversation with said person, right, you don't feel that way because you're anticipating what they're going to say. You've already practiced it and you've already gotten it out your system. So now you're going to respond appropriately, and it actually throws them off because they already know what makes you tick also. Right. And they're going to be surprised because they're expecting you to flip out and probably write them up. Right. But that's not what we do as leaders. So you have to practice those conversations. For admissions, you have to make sure that you're role playing and you're practicing those objections. I heard a leader say the other day, role playing is stupid and non-effective. I'm not sure how long you've been a leader or what kind of admissions team you actually lead. But when you're role playing with your team, that's your way in. That's how you understand what your team members are actually saying to your students that you pay tons of money for every single day. But then it also gives them an opportunity to understand where correction needs to be made and also the areas that they're doing great in so that they can continue doing that. All right. So that is so important. Make sure that you are role playing. It's not about having the perfect words, right? It's about staying emotionally steady. That's so important. Coaching yourself through triggers. So it's the same thing that we go back to, that person that walks in the door and all of a sudden your day is ruined, or you receive an email from this person, or it could be a type of student that you're speaking to that gets under your skin. You have to be able to coach yourself through that. Why do I feel this way? Based on how this person just treated me or what they said, why did it affect me? Why did it affect me in this way? So that you're able to talk yourself through these triggers so that it doesn't continue to happen. Because if you allow things to happen to you over and over, now it becomes a you problem, not them. Okay, because there's ways that you can actually fix that. There's people that you can reach out to, there's support that you can seek. Okay. And lastly, this is critical when it comes to emotional intelligence. It's not about being soft. Okay. Being emotionally intelligent, that is a power skill. If you are reactive and everything that happens around you, you just immediately react, that's a weakness. But if you're able to stop yourself and recognize, hold on for a second, this is not me, this person is taking me out of character. You may have to limit your time with certain people. You may have to change jobs, right? Or sometimes you may have to have a conversation with that person to understand, why are you this way? But for you to be able to say, I feel a certain way, but I'm not going to react. I'm going to pause, take a deep breath, and try to analyze why I feel this way. Why is this affecting me this way all the time? That is a superpower. All right. So keep that in mind. All right. If you can lead your emotions, you can lead anything and you can lead anyone. All right. So let's wrap up. All right. Here are the top points. Number one, emotional intelligence starts with you. Okay. Self-awareness and regulation, they are the foundation to emotional intelligence. You cannot lead other people if you don't even know how to lead your own emotions. Number two, emotional intelligence drives connection and trust. Stop jumping on someone every time they don't agree with you, or every time you think that a conversation is going left. Relax, pump your brakes, okay, and ask questions. All right, and the third thing, emotional intelligence in leadership is an advantage. Okay, stop leading by emotion. Stop firing people because you're pissed off at them for the day. Okay, where do they do that? All right, stop writing people up without them fully understanding what they're supposed to do in the first place. You have to be transparent as a leader because your team members are counting on you. And admissions, your students are counting on you too. So you need to keep your emotions in check. And that's for both parties. If you feel as if you're up here when it comes to emotions, you have to walk away before you open your mouth and speak to anyone, okay? Because it only takes one opportunity to ruin a great relationship forever. Okay, here's my challenge to you this week. I want you to try responding and not reacting to a tough conversation or situation. Like I said before, every single one of you, you have somebody on your team or in your workspace where you're like, if I could go back to the days where I was not saved. Okay. So I want you to practice that. I really want to hear your feedback on this discussion. So please drop in the comments. How do you feel about emotional intelligence? Was there anything that you walked away with? Is there any area that you're actually struggling in where you can say, oh my gosh, that actually really helped me? Or if you have anything to add to this conversation, feel free to drop that in the comments. All right. I do have a full admissions training and coaching program. Okay, it's called Next Level Admissions Recharge. Every single advisor has the opportunity to access this program for an entire year. Okay, it is filled with presentations, skits, because I like to make admissions fun and relatable, quizzes, which is actually really interesting to send to my leaders. So you get to see exactly what your advisors are digesting or information that you thought they already knew that they really don't. Okay. There's also there's goodies. There's different types of scripts. It goes from the very beginning to the end. It's for new advisors and it's for OG advisors who need a fresh perspective also. The most fun thing about this program is the community. The community offers daily support. Okay, all leaders get access to the community as well so that you can see what your advisors and advisors from other teams are actually writing about and asking questions about. This actually helps you stay on top of your teams because when I send this to you, you're able to see where their challenges are, and then you can train to that in your weekly one-on-ones. Okay, if you're interested in that program, you can go to my website at lessons.motivatewithkat.com. I also have a mini leadership course where I'm talking about leadership traits and theories. This is going to be very important, especially for new leaders when you're trying to gain your footing on what type of leadership style is going to suit who you are as a person and the team members that you're going to be leading. Okay, that's also on my website, and I do mystery shopping also. One of the fun part about my job. Okay, but I started this company 4 years ago because I know that there was a huge need for admissions training and support, especially when it comes to our leaders also. So once again, that's lessons.motivatewithkat.com. And do not forget to let me know how you feel about this topic. And don't forget to like and share with someone who you think can benefit. Okay, until next time, take care.